I think they call it now, I call it Rajasthan. And Swami Akhandananda has been staying with Bhatji, who is a physician and gives all of his service to everyone for free. I think we just read that Bhatji chanted these lines of this mantra, is there any way by which I may enter into the bodies of other beings and suffer their pains myself? And then he also felt deeply about, I covet not any earthly kingdom, nor heaven, nor even salvation. The only thing I desire is the removal of the miseries of the afflicted. And as we know, this ties directly in with Swamiji's teaching of worshiping God in man. So we'll start. Swami Akhandananda remembered the words of his master, I learn as long as I live, and took lessons in service from the life of the high-souled Bhatji. He himself said, serving and loving man is the highest good. This I have learned especially by seeing it practiced in Bhatji's life. When Jandu Bhatji became ill, Swami Akhandananda was happy to nurse him and try to relieve his suffering. After his recovery, Bhatji went to Kambalia to treat the wife of a wealthy businessman. Swami Akhandananda was invited to accompany him. As it was inconvenient for him to stay at the house of their host, the Swami was accommodated for the night in a large, vacant house nearby. The first night, after barring the door of his room, Swami Akhandananda lay down and closed his eyes to sleep. Then he saw a person of very ugly appearance, with 2 or 3 goats moving about him in the room. He opened his eyes again and saw that the person was sitting at a distance, but that the goats had disappeared. He shouted 2 or 3 times, "Who are you? Who are you?" but got no reply. Finally, he went to take hold of the person, but the object dissolved into thin air. He looked about for it, but it was nowhere to be found. He came back to his room and repeated aloud the Ramakrishna mantra for protection and added, "My friend, if you are a spirit, remember I am your guest. Please do not harm a guest so long as he is here." When the villagers heard about the incident next morning, they informed the Swami that the house was haunted and suggested that he stay elsewhere. Swami Akhandananda, however, did not leave the house and slept there for the next 5 nights without seeing the apparition again. Now, remember the first building that the monks stayed in was a haunted place after Ramakrishna died, so they were semi-used to having a spirit around. He remained at Kambalia, observing the life pattern of his hosts for some time before returning to Jamnagar. Then, with Bhatji again, he went to Kundala, a village in Baroda state, for a short stay. Afterwards, Bhatji returned home, and Swami Akhandananda went on to Bhavnagar after visiting Palitana, a sacred place of pilgrimage of the Jains. At Bhavnagar, he learned that Swamiji was in America. He stayed in this city for a fortnight and left by train for Bombay. On the way, he got off at Nadiad and stayed at the house of Haridas Bhai Biharidas, Dewan of the Nawab of Junagadh, who was a disciple of Swamiji, otherwise known as. The Dewan is one of the royalties, minor royalties. Here for some days he held discussions on the Vedas with Krishnananda Bhikshu. A little later he reached Bombay and remained there for about a month. He then left for Pune with Rakal Haldar, a disciple of the master. After returning to Bombay from Pune, he received a letter from Swami Brahmananda, desiring that they meet at Abu. As he arrived at Abu, he was met by both Swami Brahmananda and Swami Turiyananda. In the course of their conversations, Swami Brahmananda asked him if he knew why Swamiji had gone to America. Swami Akhandananda replied that he did not know. Then Swami Brahmananda told him, in his travels in Western India, Swamiji often shed tears seeing the misery of the common people under the tyranny of the rich. He would say, "Brother, the people here are too poor to receive your religious teachings. I shall preach religion to them when I have removed their distress. Therefore, I'm going to the land of Kubera, the god of wealth, to see if I can raise some money for them." So, then we move on. Now we know what Swamiji said was his reason for going. In Rajputana, serving God and man, its evolution. After 3 or 4 days' sojourn at Abu Road Station with Swamis Brahmananda and Turiyananda, the 3 brothers traveled to Ajmer and proceeded via pushcart to Jaipur. There they were the guests of Sardar Hari Singh Ladkhani, a devotee of Swamiji, who took them to visit various historic and sacred places. On finding that Swami Akhandananda was suffering from ailments of the chest and stomach, Swami Brahmananda advised him to go to Khetri in Rajputana, where the dry climate would help him to regain his health. Ajit Singh, a devoted disciple of Swamiji, and Raja of Khetri, welcomed Swami Akhandananda to his residence. After a month of rest there, the Swami was in good health and spent most of the time in the Raja's private library, reading the works of Theodore Parker. There's a footnote, an American preacher and social reformer of the 19th century. He read Sanskrit poetry and philosophy and Indian history. One of the Raja's officials taunted Swami Akhandananda for his incorrect pronunciation of Hindi, whereupon he applied himself diligently to the Hindi grammar of Bhasha Bhaskara and mastered it in a short time. At the invitation of Sardar Bur Singh, a relative of the Raja of Khetri, Swami Akhandananda went to Malsisar, where he spent the latter part of Chaturmasya studying Vedanta, Sanskrit, and Hindi. After the end of the Chaturmasya, he stayed for 2 months with a Jain student in a temple, subsisting on alms and listening regularly to an exposition of the life of Sri Shankaracharya by Pandit Sitaram. He learned from him that Pandit Narayan Shastri, a famous scholar of the Nyaya philosophy and an inhabitant of Sheikhabati, had long ago proclaimed in this region that Sri Ramakrishna was an avatar, an incarnation of God. For about 8 months, Swami Akhandananda toured the villages of Rajputana, seeing with his own eyes the differences in the lives of the rich Sardars and the poor peasants. The utter misery of the poor tenants pained him deeply. He was now sure that it was the paramount duty of good men to remove the miseries of the downtrodden and to raise them up in every way possible. He wrote a letter in chaste Hindi to the Raja of Khetri, enclosing a pamphlet, The Duty of a Ruler to His Subjects, in which he described how the rich landlords extracted their wealth from the toil of the poor tenants, compelling the tenants to suffer for want of bare necessities and to live in wretched huts with neither light nor ventilation. On receiving this letter, Raja Ajit Singh respectfully invited Swami Akhandananda to Khetri. Coming back to Khetri in the early part of 1894, he wrote to Swamiji in America, giving him a description of the abject misery of the people in that part of the country. He wanted to know from Swamiji whether his vow to try and remove the distress of the poor was proper or not. He spent the whole night writing the letter. The state of his mind can best be judged from his own reminiscences. At first, I shunned crowded places and traveled alone in Tibet and the Himalayas. Then for 4 or 5 years, I moved about in the villages and cities of Gujarat, Kathiawar, Kutch, and Rajputana. These later years of traveling enabled me to study the real condition of the laborers and farmers, which was not possible while I was living in the hills. The sight of a handful of rich people squandering the hard-earned money of millions of their less fortunate brothers has deprived me of peace and happiness for the rest of my life. I have fully realized that it is vain for me to hope for peace of mind until the misery and distress of my country is removed. I had expected that since I was a sannyasin, I would easily attain such peace. But this hope has vanished like a dream. My life became full of disquiet and sorrow when I saw the abject conditions under which the people of India were living. That India, which was once the home of charity and dharma, my dream of a happy life was broken forever. At this very time, a revered Swamiji's voice and message was resounding in triumph across the American continent. I wrote to him in detail of my state of mind at the sight of the miseries of my countrymen. Swami Akhandananda had previously observed the miserable living conditions of the common people, but at that time he was so preoccupied with his search for Swamiji that the external world was of no consideration to him. Now, however, the revelation to him of society in all its nakedness and cruel inequality deprived him of peace and rest. The change in his mental attitude did not occur suddenly. It was a natural evolution, in tune with his progress in the spiritual disciplines given to him by the Master. At first, he renounced everything completely. Neti, neti, not this, not this. Then he was able to realize his ideal. Finally, he could accept everything. Iti, iti. It is this, it is this. And the ideal was visualized in every being, in the animate and the inanimate. Referring to his mood at that time, he said later, I had determined that unless Swamiji wrote me an encouraging reply, I would leave this country for good. The state of my mind was such that it was impossible for me to remain in the country without doing something for it. As he searched for the cause of the suffering of the downtrodden in India, he realized, and this is a quote from his, this evil has come about only because of social inequality. As in the spiritual world, all evil arises after the idea of duality, so in society, evil arises after the acceptance of inequality. From the idea of difference comes the sense of high and low and unequal treatment. This idea of difference is the root of all evil. In later years, to those who would want to hear of his experiences in life, the Swami would say, with tears in my eyes, I would place my grievance before the master and say, "Why is there this difference? Why did you not distribute wealth equally to all in society?" As a result of his travels and study of India's history, the sannyasin realized that the country had undoubtedly fallen from its earlier glory, but he was convinced that with the spread of social justice and humanitarianism, the dawn of a new age was assured. What was the first step, then, to improve the lives of the oppressed? These were his thoughts. In India, the crying need is food. What will it avail a poor and hungry man to hear of the mysteries of religion, the subtle discussions of psychologists, the intricate solutions of the Sankhya philosophy or of Vedanta and its theory of Maya? Pondering on these matters, Swami Akhandananda came to the conclusion that the first step towards improving the condition of the people was to provide for their basic needs. The spiritual regeneration of the country would come about in its normal course if the basic needs of the hungry masses were met first. The sannyasin of the New Age, in his devotion to the service of his countrymen, was willing to forego his own salvation for their sake. Not many months before at Abu Road, he had heard from Swami Brahmananda about Swamiji's sympathy for India's poor. However, Swami Akhandananda had a lingering doubt whether Swamiji would encourage him in this seemingly secular work. He anxiously awaited his leader's approval of his ideas. The welfare of the people of Khetri depended on the Raja and the officers of the state. If they loved their country and religion, it was to be reflected in the way they treated their subjects. With this idea in mind, Swami Akhandananda began to hold regular discourses on the Vedanta every evening at the court, emphasizing particularly the demand for social equality and sympathy for the poor. And I think you'll all recognize this is teaching the basic dharma of the ruling class, what their responsibilities and duties are for being a member of that ruling class. While Swami Akhandananda was living at the palace as a highly honored guest, his close contact with the Raja began to bring about a noticeable change in the latter's daily life and character, inspiring him to emulate the noble ideas of the ancient Hindu kings. For example, it had been the Raja's habit not to leave his bed until late in the morning. One day, Swami Akhandananda told him that late rising was contrary to the duty of a king. Moreover, it was bad for health. He then quoted a Sanskrit verse. Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, forsakes even her husband Narayana if he wears shabby clothes, does not clean his teeth, eats too much, uses harsh words, or lies in bed when the sun rises or sets. So, dear king, you will lose your wealth if you don't do this. From that time onwards, the Raja began to rise very early. Swami Akhandananda was grateful that one word from him had sufficed to help the Raja change a habit of long standing. The sannyasin led an uncompromising life at the palace. One evening, during a discourse on the Vedanta, a courtier remarked, "His Highness knows everything of the Vedanta." It was too much for Swami Akhandananda to bear. He replied to the courtier in forceful language, "What do you mean? Even 80 years of study is not enough to enable a sannyasin to master Vedanta. And your Raja has mastered it even though he is immersed in sport and fun? If you had said he knew nothing, he might have felt abashed and made an attempt to learn something. The assembled court remained silent till Raja Ajit Singh at last broke the silence, remarking, "Rightly said, Maharaj, rightly said." So for about 2 months, discourses on the Vedanta were continued at the court. In early April, Swami Akhandananda went to Jaipur, and a few days later, the Raja went as usual to his summer resort at Mount Abu. From a letter written by Swamiji to the Raja of Khetri, Swami Akhandananda learned of the activities and influence Swamiji was exerting in the United States. In great joy, he wrote to Pramada Babu, "In Europe and America, Swamiji has ushered in a new era. The whole of India should be grateful to him, and with one voice offer him thanks. The glory is not his alone, it is the glory of all India." He suggested to Pramada Babu that the Pandits of Varanasi write a letter of thanks to Swamiji in Sanskrit. While at Jaipur, Swami Akhandananda became acquainted with Samartha Das Ji, editor of the Rajasthan Samachar. They were together for a few days at Ajmer. Then the Swami left for Udaipur. On the train, he met the nephew of the chief minister of the Maharana of Udaipur. From him, he learned that the Maharana had expressed a wish to hear some of the Bengali dramas based on Rajput history. The chief minister's nephew had learned Bengali and was planning to read the dramas aloud to the Maharana. Thus, in pleasant conversation, they reached Chittor, where they were guests of the governor. A day or two later, Swami Akhandananda went to Udaipur and stayed outside the city at Ganeshji's temple in the garden of Golabagh. There he lived on alms. When money was offered to him, he directed that it be given to the brahmacharan who was the keeper of the temple. The quiet atmosphere of this charming historical city delighted the Swami greatly. The Maharana's famous garden library was still a greater attraction for him. After being introduced to the librarian, he regularly read history, archaeology, and the Panchadasi. Since alms are not given during the rainy season, that's a new one, Swami Akhandananda decided to observe the Chaturmasya at the temple. One day, the nephew of the chief minister sent a big parcel for him, as a result of which the brahmacharan began to show him attention. He hoped that when visitors came to the temple, they would find the sannyasin in meditation and that more offerings would pour in. Instead, Swami Akhandananda would lie on the veranda of the temple all day and pore over large English volumes. Then he would meditate at night. The disappointed brahmacharan, although he attended and served the sannyasin, would say to him while he was absorbed in study, "Look, sir, when devotees come, you should be in meditation." The nephew of the chief minister had great respect for Swami Akhandananda. Excuse me. And sent him customary offerings by way of honoring him. And he spent some time every day talking with him at the temple. One day the nephew asked Swami Akhandananda to address a meeting. It was his wish that the Swami speak only on religion and not on any altruistic or political matters. "Well," said the Swami, "then I'll speak on the tyranny of usurers." "No, not even that. Speak only on religion." When Swami Akhandananda responded that he could not give a made-to-order speech, the proposal of holding a meeting was dropped altogether. Later, describing the pitiable condition of the common people, Swami Akhandananda said, "The poor folk used to hide their grain in the earth to keep it from falling into the hands of the Maharaja or his agents. It was only after the agents had departed that the grain was dug out." He passed on this information to Swamiji, who was still in America. The Swami also wrote a letter to Pramada Babu, relating many incidences about the sad plight of the people of Rajputana, mentioning at the end, "The people of British India can at least express their grievances, but such is not the case in Rajputana states. No one dares to do so." Let me see. A great number of Naga sannyasins, it's an order of monks, they're the naked ones, went to Udaipur to spend the 4 months of the rainy season. As usual, they spent these months by turn in each of the Rajputana states. Swami Akhandananda came in contact with the Nagas and became aware of their utter ignorance in matters of history and geography, and even in matters of the Holy Scriptures. They were under the delusion that Bibhishana, the brother of Ravana, was still reigning over Lanka. And when they were told that Ayodhya, the kingdom of Rama, was being ruled by the British, they could only disbelieve it. They were exasperated. And I think we'll stop there with exasperated Nagas, okay? We have to stop in an exciting place, so we'll want to come back. Okay. This Saturday, we will have Swami Sarvadevananda's class on the Bhagavad Gita at 5 in the temple. And he will give the lecture on Sunday the 17th. It's going to be the Ramakrishna order and its inspiration. I think this will be very interesting.
Yeah.
We also are going to have our Christmas Eve sing-along, and I may as well announce it now. Vajraprana will be giving the lecture on Christmas Eve, which is a Sunday, and directly after the lecture we'll be having a coffee and gathering down in the convent at 12. And everyone who comes to the lecture is invited, and even some of those that don't. It will not be online, however. We'll miss some of you. I'm sorry?
The lecture will be just not the coffee.
Yeah, the lecture will be online, but not the coffee down in the convent. Were there any questions about what we read today, or any comments? Sunanda?
Yeah.
Did you have one?
Oh, no,
Oh, okay.
no, just, it's very interesting. It's really a great book.
I think it is too. I think it explains in detail how the Ramakrishna order really was inspired to do community work, which, as he said, seems to be very, very secular, and at the same time do very, very spiritual work.
Mm-hmm.
And I know many people have asked, well, what do you do in the United States? Why is it just lectures? But when Swamiji came to the United States, as he said, he found the world of Kubera, the god of wealth. And he did not see that much social work. Social welfare was fairly well taken care of. From what he could see, he said what people in the United States need and the West need is spiritual understanding and peace of mind. So they were going to give the precepts of religion, how to change your inner character and not just simply go after wealth. John, you have your hand up?
Well, that statement is awesome in the sense that with the minimal social welfare that we had at that time in America, it states how horrible it must have been in India.
Yeah, but I mean, they had, what he saw was even the poorest people in the United States were not like in India. That they could get some food, they could get some job, but people needed to have the precepts of God in every single being so they could look at all the people.
He
Anyway,
also ran into a lot of reformers.
I'm sorry.
He also ran into a lot of reformers.
Yeah, he did.
And went to a prison and was so impressed by how nice the prisons were compared to India. And
Yeah. As Vrajapana was saying, he ran into a lot of reformers here and saw the prisons over here, they were so much better than the ones in India. Everything was better than it was in India. And so that's where he felt that we needed the spiritual teaching. As he said, his idea of a perfect Vedantist would be the energy of the West with the spirituality of the East. So, because he felt that India was steeped in tamas. They had resigned themselves to this lifestyle, waiting for the next incarnation rather than getting up and helping themselves, getting up, and he felt education was very, very necessary, which we'll continue reading Swami Akhandananda and we'll find out how they did that. Okay. And everyone have a wonderful next week. Stay healthy. And we'll end with it. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.